thank you all very much for coming to our special session with Jared Polis, the Democratic nominee for governor here in the state of Colorado. I want everyone to know we invited Walker Stapleton not only to this event, but we also gave Walker the chance, and I gave him that opportunity personally to join me on the show on any date and at any time in July, August, September, and October, and he could not find 60 minutes to join us. So I just want everyone to know, because we are a nonpartisan program, that Walker had close to an infinite opportunity to be on the program. So it's our obligation to give both sides a chance to appear. Walker declined to do that. Personally, although obviously we have lots of programs to do, I think it's unfortunate for the people of Colorado to not see both candidates in an unrehearsed setting, and especially on our program because of our nonpartisan reputation. And I want to give Jared Polis a lot of credit for coming here today and for spending this much time with us. So with that in mind, would you please welcome Congressman Jared Polis.
Great to see you. What a beautiful venue this is.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it. And so, Jared, I want to start off just as you look at the state. Of course, you've been in the U.S. Congress. You've been so actively involved in a number of issues that are critical to Colorado. If you had to pick one single issue, what would be the number one issue, in your opinion, today facing the state that you, as governor, would put at the top of your list?
So, you know, it's hard to pick one, Aaron, but for me, a lot of my focus in my time in public service has been about education, because I feel it's not only the key to our future success as a state and as a nation, but it's also important for today's families. And so when we look at things that we don't have in Colorado, that it costs family money, like preschool and kindergarten, which are extremely expensive. There are red states like Oklahoma that have preschool and kindergarten. And Colorado is such a prosperous state. Why don't we offer free preschool and kindergarten to families? Instead, like so many things in society, if you're very low income, you might get a preschool slot. If you're very wealthy, you can afford it. But everybody in the middle gets left out. With the cost of kindergarten, usually you get half-day free, full days, $400 or $500 a month. That's a lot for families. Preschool's twice that much for families. And you know, I'm the father of a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old. Why should my kids start out at an advantage over families that can't afford preschool and kindergarten? Throughout our education, we really need to invest in our schools, make sure that teachers can have a smaller class size, and we're able to compensate teachers enough so that people can afford to teach and live in the communities they teach in.
So when you look at preschool, if we're providing preschool, if we start an effort to provide preschool to all kids, at no cost, and certainly full-day kindergarten as well. Some of those estimates are in the hundreds of millions of dollars annually. I know you feel that's a worthwhile investment. Where do we get that money, and is that something we can simply afford to do today, given the number of new dollars coming into Colorado, or do we need to do something differently? So I'd like to ask you that, but I'd also like to touch on after that on how we make the entire K through 12 system a lot more effective and efficient. But let's talk about the dollars.
Many young families today can't afford not having preschool and kindergarten. It means delaying decisions to own a home, having to live further and further from where people's jobs are, which means putting more traffic on our roads. We look at partnerships like the one in Westminster, Adams 50 School District, Pay for Success Partnership. So Westminster really is in many ways leading the state. They have full-day kindergarten for every kid, and they have half-day preschool for half their kids and full day for the other half. And they do that through a public-private partnership and using a mechanism that we call social impact bonding. So what it does is it actually recaptures savings that have been demonstrated to occur when kids have preschool and kindergarten over the next decade. Because when kids have preschool and kindergarten, there's lower special education rates. There's lower grade repetition rates, which cost the state a whole nother year of money. There's lower youth adjudication rates. So what we do is we find philanthropic or semi-philanthropic investors willing to advance the money, put it at some risk, and they're actually repaid based on the future savings over the following decade. It's a very exciting model in Westminster. We look forward to really bringing these kinds of models next statewide that have the added benefit of making sure that the investment in preschool and kindergarten, in addition to being good for kids, does actually save taxpayers money over time.
So how about in terms of another way to save money? I think a lot of us who have been involved in K through 12 education feel, and I know a lot of taxpayers feel that there seems to be a higher level of administrative support, shall we say, both within schools and in central administrations than we need. You've been involved in the creation of charter schools. You chaired the State Board of Education. What can we do about streamlining, making administration more efficiently, and what kind of dollars could we save there?
So first of all, we absolutely need to do that. The challenge in our state is more the governance of education. Local districts have a lot of influence. That's why people should pay attention to their school board races. They're the ones who decide where schools are, what the programs are. However, because the state contributes funding, we can actually tie any increases in funding to actual requirements that they reach the classroom, meaning smaller class size, better teacher pay, aren't intercepted by administrators along the way. It's still going to be up to districts in terms of exactly what their pay scale is and what their class sizes are, but we can certainly tie any increased state investment to make sure that actually reaches the classroom and isn't intercepted along the way, because we need to streamline that bureaucracy that in some districts, not all, eats up too much of our resources.
I think a lot of people, I'd say the vast majority of Colorado citizens today, feel that our K through 12 system isn't doing the job it should. It doesn't mean they're totally unhappy, but we're not seeing the kind of progress, certainly when you look at test scores, et cetera, we're not seeing the kind of progress that we want to have. Why is that, and how can you as governor really make a difference in this regard? Because clearly, if you look back historically, that has not happened.
Yeah, and what you see, Aaron, like in a lot of areas, it's really hit or miss depending on where you live. And our education shouldn't depend on your parents' income, your race, your geography. So we need to do a better job making sure that we have a great opportunity for every child, no matter where you live in the state, no matter what your background. We have a lot of ideas to do that. As you mentioned, I've started some high schools that have helped new immigrants learn English, another one for homeless youth in Denver. The biggest thing we need to do on the high school side is make sure that when kids are graduating high school, especially if they're not going on to a four-year, that they have some skill or certificate or vocational ability in addition to their high school diploma. Because a high school diploma in a rapidly evolving 21st century economy is not enough to really give you a pathway to success. So what does that mean where, okay, you're going to graduate high school, maybe you can get a welding certificate concurrently or an associate's degree. Like at an early college, high school, in conjunction with a community college? Or how can we expand apprenticeship programs like CareerWise to reach more kids in our state? So while people are juniors and seniors in high school, they're actually getting a day or two of workplace experience that can result in a job offer when they graduate.
All right, last question on the subject before we take a break. How would you, if you had to pick one way to differentiate yourself between your opponent when it comes through K through 12 education, talking to the voters of Colorado, what would that point be?
Well, for the longest time, he didn't seem to have any ideas on it. He released just a few weeks ago a education policy position, and they're very bad policies. So I'll tell you what his two are. I mean, they're not, they're just what he put down. He wants a tax-deferred savings account for parents to pay for piano or tutoring. And the second one is a holiday on sales tax from notebooks and school supplies. So let me just address, if you had all the money in the world, those two things are fine. There's no philosophical issue with those two things. The biggest problem with those two things are they drain money out of our public schools. So you're basically giving up on them to say, okay, we're going to help wealthy parents who can afford to put money aside into a pre-tax account, hire tutoring to get their kid up to grade level. Guess where that money comes out of? It comes out of the public schools. The other transfer out of the public schools would be school supplies. And listen, I've heard from thousands of parents across the state in an over 20-year career in education. They have many complaints about education. Believe me, parents aren't shy. Not a single one ever, to me, has said, what really gets me is the sales tax on my kids' notebooks at the end of summer. That's just not a thing. It's not a thing. So it kind of shows he's out of touch, right? Now, we have initiatives around the cost of textbooks, like moving towards more open source textbooks, because the bigger issue than the sales tax is, frankly, that some textbooks have ridiculous pricing from the textbook manufacturers. So we have part of our plan addresses that. But that's really a huge night and day difference between our comprehensive plan and his kind of talking point, superficial ideas that would actually make it worse.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with Jared Polis in just a moment.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. You can follow the show on Twitter for instant notification of new episodes, live event invitations, outtakes, and behind-the-scene photos. And tweet us your topic and guest suggestions today. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. I very much would like to hear from you about the program, so please send me an email with your thoughts. You can suggest what topics I should cover, what guests I should invite to be on the show, or even what specific questions you would like me to ask. This is your program, so send your suggestions to aaron@harbertv.com. I promise to personally read every one, so email me today. And most of all, thanks for watching.
Join me and watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
Watch the Aaron Harper Show.
Watch The Aaron Harber Show.
I'm Reverend Jesse Jackson. Watch the Aaron Harber Show and keep hope alive.
I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scene photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. Remember, this is part one of our special two-part series with gubernatorial nominee Jared Polis. So, Jared, one of the things you've never been shy about, I mean, we've known each other for way too long, I'll admit, is taking on special interests. Certainly, when you look at the political landscape today, special interests play a huge role for a number of reasons. We can talk about why, but tell me your sense of how politics has evolved since you started, the role of special interests, and your real willingness, to what degree do you have a real willingness to take special interests on?
Well, it ain't pretty, Aaron, and even the closer you get to it, frankly, the uglier it looks. I mean, I think the people of this state and of this country are right in having a disdain for a system in which too many politicians of both parties are working to co-opt the public sector for the benefit of a few who have the lobbyists rather than for the people. I mean, I'm in this fight to improve the quality of life for Coloradans. And so when you look at our 100-day plan to reduce costs on healthcare and save people money, sure, does it involve things that maybe the pharmaceutical industry doesn't like or the insurance industry doesn't like? It does, because it puts saving you money first and letting Coloradans keep a little bit more of their paycheck at the end of every month. We're getting ripped off on healthcare, as an example. And that doesn't mean that we don't all appreciate what pharmaceutical companies do and the cutting-edge research that they do that could save your life or mine. But what it does mean is, why should Americans pay 5 to 7 times as much for the exact same prescription drug as Canadians and Germans and British? It just doesn't make sense that this is all on the backs of Americans, and it's one of the things that not only costs us money, but ultimately costs many Americans lives who can't afford the high cost of health care.
All right, I want to talk about healthcare some more, but I want to jump to, since we were talking about special interests, give me an example where you feel you've really stood up to special interests and maybe paid a price for it. And then I want to jump to public lands, but give me that example first.
Well, on issue after issue, right? So, I mean, I've always stood, as you know, for putting health and safety first around oil and gas and making sure that we don't do anything to compromise the health of our communities. I've talked about how we can do larger setbacks as well as honor surface use agreements, better technology to keep people safe. I took on nationally the for-profit student loan industry, which was extracting usurious interest rates from our students. And I worked with President Obama to help make sure that we were able to save students money on financing their education. So the way I just approach any issue, it's not so much about each one, we could probably talk about them forever, is how do we put people first in this equation and provide some counterbalance to reflect, to protect against Republicans or Democrats sort of co-opting government for the private gain of those who have the best lobbyists.
All right, well, we will talk about some of those subjects more in depth. Let's jump to public lands, though, because special interests certainly are playing a major role today when you look at what the Trump administration is doing. What is your concern when it comes to public lands, both state and federal? And I'd really like to know, what do you think you could do as governor on these issues?
So another big area of difference between me and Walker Stapleton. Walker Stapleton supports the Utah-style policies of privatizing or carving up our public lands. To me, this is really an issue that is core to our identity as Coloradans and as Westerners. I mean, who are we? I think in many ways we're defined by our public lands, whether it's where you used to fish as a kid, growing up hunting with your grandfather. It's really about who we are. Yes, it's about the environment, but it's also about jobs. It's about the outdoor tourism and recreation industry. It's about the livelihood for many Coloradans. In fact, most Coloradans in places like Eagle and Summit and Grand County, and even here in Denver, which is home to the outdoor industry trade show. So I will stand up to this president or any president to protect our public lands because they're an iconic part of who we are and a big driver of jobs in our economy.
All right, talk about jobs and also kind of Western spirit. I mean, you're known as a very successful entrepreneur, starting at a relatively young age, as I recall. Talk a little bit about, and I think people would like to hear about both one or two of your successes and what you did to make those happen. But I'm also going to ask you to give me an example of one or two of your failures and what you learned from them. And then we'll talk about entrepreneurship.
Oh boy, so I've had a number of I'm a startup guy. I've done, Colorado is really all about innovation, right? Whether it's a pastor starting a new church, whether it's innovation in education, whether it's private sector innovation in aerospace or in tech, which is what I was involved with. So absolutely, when you start a company, you're taking a risk, and I'm a big baseball guy. You know that, Aaron. In fact, I was going to wear my purple tie out here in the hopes, clinging on to hope for the Rockies, but I decided this would air after that, so I wanted to put on a different tie just in case. But you know what? It's like baseball. So I mean, if you're batting 280, 300, you're doing pretty well. So yeah, of course, I've had several great success stories. Proflowers.com, BlueMountain.com, American Information Systems, maybe some sacrifice outs or singles. I started a movie theater in Aurora, a Sonora Entertainment Group, Cinema Latino, and of course a number of companies that didn't work out as well. And I'm just as proud of those because you learn a lot from your failures just as you learn a lot from your successes. Now in the public side, representing Northern Colorado, introducing bills in Congress, honestly, Aaron, there's a lot more failures than successes, right? I mean, most bills don't pass. I've been honored to be a part of rewriting No Child Left Behind. I helped author the Every Student Succeeds Act and work with President Obama to get a bipartisan bill with almost universal support passed. But so many other bills, of course, that just weren't able to go anywhere because of the divisions of the country.
What about as governor? How do you think your background as an entrepreneur will help you as governor and will help the state in terms of economic development?
Well, I think it's important to have a governor that kind of gets innovation, value creation, out-of-the-box thinking. We need more creativity in the public sector. We need more people who are willing to kind of bring together non-conventional coalitions. Of course, it's about bringing Republicans and Democrats together, but there's so many more types of divides that we need to breach. I mean, too often in politics they think political. We need to bridge the urban-rural divide, right? We need to bridge the divide between executives and management employees. We need to divide between the suburbs and the city. I mean, these are all the kinds of things that we need to get people thinking out of the box on the same page for real innovative solutions that save Coloradans money and improve our quality of life.
So in that vein, what can we do from a regulatory perspective? You understand, you've been in small business as I have. It seems like the reach or overreach of government at times is extraordinary and can stifle small businesses. How do we make government regulation less obtrusive and less burdensome, yet just as effective in terms of protecting citizens, protecting consumers?
Certainly, number one that I hear from small businesses and that I experience firsthand is the cost of healthcare. So if we can reduce the cost of healthcare in Colorado, we make our state a lot more competitive for small business and leave small businesses with more money to hire more people or in their pocket. I'll give you another example. One of our areas of focus is increasing renewable energy in Colorado. We want to remove red tape and reduce barriers and reduce costs to siting renewable energy projects on our state-owned land. We own a lot, over millions of acres of state land, mostly in eastern Colorado, which is our main renewable energy corridor for solar and wind. It's ridiculous that siting for a solar and wind project takes many times longer than siting, for instance, for an oil and gas project on the same land. So let's streamline that process and allow a solar or wind project to be deployed on state land with much lower transaction and legal costs.
All right, we're going to take our final break and we'll be right back.
For information on how to help promote civil and mutually respectful discourse and support expansion of the distribution of our programs, please email info@harbertv.com.
The Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award recognizes an individual who, through leadership, skill, and dedication, is advancing the broadcast industry in our state and our nation. Tonight, we honor Aaron Harber. Aaron has worked extensively in the media as a host, producer, political and economic commentator, and columnist. Today, the Aaron Harber Show is the focus of his media involvement. Aaron, it is a privilege to present you with the Rex Howell Broadcaster of the Year Award. Congratulations.
Just make journalism great again. I'm Aaron Harber, host of The Aaron Harber Show. Find us on Facebook to get all the latest updates, see behind-the-scenes photos, and make comments and ask me questions. You can see episodes before their TV broadcast, so like the show today.
The Aaron Harber Show may be viewed 24/7 at no charge from any location in the world at harbertv.com.
Welcome back to the show. We're with Jared Polis, the Democratic nominee for governor. This is our final segment in part one of our two-part series with Jared. So healthcare, obviously, a huge issue across the state with Coloradans. What's your solution to the challenges when you look at exorbitant costs, you look at a lack of delivery of service in many areas of the state, and really the fact that even those of us who have healthcare coverage, insurance, often have these ridiculous, $10,000, $15,000 deductible plans.
Yeah, look, Coloradans are literally getting ripped off on healthcare, as are Americans. I mean, we are spending literally twice as much as every other industrialized nation as a percentage of our GDP. For results that are in the middle of the pack and don't even cover everybody. Our North Star and my value that we will apply to any idea from the right, the center, or the left on healthcare reform is, does it reduce costs and save people money, expand coverage, and improve or maintain the quality of care? So if it meets those three criteria, we're excited to embrace a broad range of ideas that can save small businesses and individuals money. We put a number of those out in our 100-day plan to save people and small businesses money on healthcare. It's at polisforcolorado.com.
What about the concept of Medicare for all, as well as some people want Medicaid for all and think it's superior because it provides additional benefits, home care for people who are homebound or need to be in a facility?
So many of those things are worth talking about nationally. In fact, I sponsor some of those bills that would save people money and have a basic baseline of care, and even removing the burden from small businesses to apply health care. At the state level, we have to take what we have, meaning Medicaid is there, as is Medicare, as is the VA. So we have to work within the existing framework of what we have to try to save people money and to expand coverage. The two go hand in hand. When people are uninsured, it's not only about that human aspect of not knowing how to pay for your health care and losing your home and going bankrupt. It's also about those costs being transferred into you and I who pay for our insurance. So everybody's paying more because we're paying for the costs of those who are uncompensated, who can't pay for their own care, who the hospital is simply not able to collect from. So we need to do it more efficiently. We need more transparency in pricing so markets can work and bring down costs through competition. We need to look at how we can reduce costs on prescription drugs. We have ideas like importation from Canada, as well as laws that would prevent price gouging here. There's no reason, for instance, that insulin, which is a lifeline, of course, for many diabetics, went up in cost 1,000%. in the last 15 to 20 years. Basically same technology, same products, same with EpiPen, which we've all heard about, that many people who are allergic to bee stings or food might carry with them. $450 for an EpiPen. You go to Canada or England, it's $50. So I mean, again, we're getting ripped off, and I'm going to do everything I can as governor to put Coloradans first.
All right, last issue on health, mental health. It seems that most Coloradans are very concerned about a number of mental health issues, want people to get the care and the treatment they need, but our resources don't even come close to meeting that need. How do we address that challenge?
So we need to make sure that when we talk about health care, that access to mental health services is an integral part of that. For many of our rural areas, there's a lack of providers. How do we use telehealth and remote through high-speed internet consulting? How do we look at mobile health clinics? How do we make sure that where we interact with, for instance, kids at schools, there's counselors that are able to identify and work with whether they're a risk to themselves. And unfortunately, one of the sad areas, Colorado, is one of the leaders in the country in is youth suicide. So I mean, we need to have a better job identifying and working on and addressing mental health issues early.
Across the entire country, when you look at the range of types of disabilities people have, and we have an extraordinary disability community here, or really multiple communities. But we certainly, when you look at the state involvement, certainly is clear we are not providing the assistance, the help we need to many people with disabilities. How do we address that specifically? And also, how can we reduce the red tape involved so that people with disabilities don't have to go through extraordinarily excruciating paperwork processes, wait months and sometimes even years for help?
You know, we see a slice of this as a representative where we deal with casework, and we see in particular all the ridiculous red tape that we put our veterans and those with PTSD and other disabilities through, whether they're qualifying for their disability benefits or disability under Social Security. So we've seen this. We need to fix it. It's one of the reasons I chose the running mate I did, Diane Primavera, who, if you elect me, will be the next Lieutenant Governor of Colorado. She has spent a lifetime as a passionate advocate for full inclusion of people with disabilities, including as a legislator, having crafted many of the laws in Colorado that allow people with disabilities to truly participate in all of our state's success, as well as she's been a passionate advocate of the patient advocacy side of healthcare as the former executive director of the Susan G. Komen Foundation. So Diane Primavera will be an excellent partner, but it starts with listening, and we've had a number of meetings with people with disabilities across the state to really make sure that the way that we can streamline policy and reduce red tape improves their quality of life.
Diane actually, when she was a state representative, was my state representative. I live in her district.
Is that why? That's why I picked her. I said, I got to get Aaron's representative.
All right, we only have 60 seconds left. I want you still to tackle marijuana. What does the state need to do in terms of marijuana policies? How do we address the issue of banking for marijuana companies? And what do we do in terms of educating kids so that they're not encouraged to use marijuana at an early age?
So we talked about how medical marijuana can be part of therapy for pain management that can prevent having to resort to prescription opioids. Yes, of course, the industry needs to be banked for auditing reasons, for criminal justice reasons. I would try to find creative solutions as governor to allow banking and capital formation. It's obviously a local decision how that industry is incorporated into a particular community. Do we have dispensaries? Do we not? Do we allow medicinal or recreational? That's appropriately decided, like many other decisions at the local level. Overall, there's been hundreds of millions of dollars of tax revenue that's gone to our schools. Above that, local revenue that's really helped been transformative in places like Trinidad, Colorado. If you've been to the downtown there area recently, two things have helped that town go from, if you went there 15 years ago, the main street was probably a third to half vacant. Arts and marijuana have really been a big part of the resurgence of that town, and the mayor told me that about a quarter of their town revenue, all new revenue, comes from their municipal marijuana taxes. So it's really been in the areas that have made it work as part of their community, a big part of their economic recovery and job creation and improving a lot of their public areas.
All right, on that note, we're going to end part one of our special two-part series with Jared Polis. Make sure you watch part two. I'm Aaron Harber. Thanks for watching.
Please contact us. We want to hear from you. And thanks for watching.